It's difficult to ignore all the tongue-in-cheek comments going around social media about the high cost of unga and other basic commodities. But for many Kenyans, this is no laughing matter. The price of maize meal has shot up, now retailing at an average of 150 shillings per packet compared to November last year when a 2 kg bag cost 90 shillings. And it's not just the unga. Today, Kenyans have to dig deeper to afford other basic food items. Milk and sugar becoming a luxury for many, forcing some to cross the border for shopping.
Mostly prefer kununua Uganda ni sukari, maziwa na unga kwa sababu the same prices, the same commodities in Uganda they are cheaper.
The debate is now shaping the election politics.
Our economy is in turmoil. The cost of living is beyond reach for millions of our citizens.
Na wenzangu, mimi sisemi ya kwamba kwa muda wa miaka hiyo yote we don't have problems. We do. Kama sasa tunajua gharama ya unga imeenda juu. Na sisi tuwafanya juu chini kuona ni nini ambayo tutaweza kufanya tuhakikishe ya kwamba tumesaidia mwananchi kushukisha hiyo bei ya unga na sukari na mambo yale mengine.
And prompting the president to call a special sitting of the National Assembly. Tonight, we quiet down the politics and gather the stakeholders. How did Kenya get here and how do we get out? What do the cereal growers say about the current situation? Did the millers foresee this crisis? And is government to blame for failing to implement crucial policy? Up next on the RoundTable with Asha Mwelu.
Good evening. On a day that a packet of unga costs 150 shillings in Kenya, we've gathered here at Swiss International and Anamount Hotel to meet the stakeholders and find out what exactly is going on. We have Dr. Wahome Gakuru, who is the former CEO of Vision 2030. Thanks for being here. We have Mr. Anthony Kioko from the Cereal Growers Association here in Kenya. We have Mr. Gerald Masila, who is from the East African Grain Council. We have Mr. Nick Hutchinson from the Cereal Millers Association. And of course, our policy analyst for tonight, Dr. Ayeko from Tegemeo Institute of Agricultural Policy and Development. Long word, yeah? Of Egerton University. Yeah, Dr. Milton Ayeko. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. We are buying unga at 150 shillings. What's going on? Maybe the millers can kick off this discussion.
I think, thanks, good evening. None of the millers I know are selling maize at 150 shillings. It's a reflection of the retail trade increases the price as a consequence of a shortage. When there's a shortage, you can't meet demand, which is what the situation is. But I would probably say the highest price the millers are selling at is between 135 and 140.
So it's the retailers selling at 150 to make their profit. And I mean, there's a story today on the newspaper that your organization says this is likely to go until July.
I think if the interventions remain as they are for the moment, imported ships are coming in every couple of weeks. There are delays at the port in terms of offloading those. Yes, that's what the message we were giving is, that we shouldn't expect much of a change. But obviously if interventions are made, which we can discuss later during the evening, then we can have an impact on that. That's what we were trying to signal. Right. But don't expect things to change too much.
I mean, it's really perplexing to hear that we have a shortage of maize in a country that, 3% of our GDP comes from maize farming. What's going on? Who should we be asking that question? Why don't you have maize? Dr. Gakuru is saying, pointing next to him.
The growers.
The growers, the farmers.
Yeah, they should tell us.
Why do you think they've not been farming enough?
Well, I think we don't have enough maize in the granary, and I think that is it. I think the growers perhaps can tell us what's happening to the yield and the quality and getting it to market.
Right. Over to you, Kioko.
Thank you, Asha. It's a good point that you're making, that there isn't sufficient stocks of maize. But I think, in all honesty, we should admit that this is not supposed to be the sort of emergency that we are purporting it to be. This has been long in coming. If you consider the sort of steps that we've been taking as a country, I want to believe that the yields for maize have stagnated for a long time, and the production has not been matching the demand. The population has been growing at probably 2.5% per annum, but the increase in productivity and production is not growing to match that. Now, there are many factors to that.
Before we get to the factors, can we talk about how much maize we produced? Do we know that? How much maize did you produce as growers?
I would reckon that the numbers would over around 25 to 35 million. It will depend on a year, because the fluctuations can be quite enormous. But we're lucky that Dr. Ayeko is around. They keep tabs on the numbers. He could clarify that. But suffice it to say that what we produce is not enough to meet the demands of what we need as a country.
But was there a warning? If we know that the growers can't produce enough maize, I mean, that shouldn't be like a surprise. It shouldn't come as a surprise to the government.
It is no surprise. And we have known this for the last 100 years. We have drought in 5-year cycles. The last one was 2008-2011, and we have another one right on time.
But it's interesting you're bringing that up, because you were in charge of Vision 2030.
Yeah.
We are in 2017. That vision is seeming really bleak if we're talking about issues of bread and butter, that we are unable to feed a nation.
Yeah.
And when we feed them, it's really hurting their pockets. So what was your job in terms of making sure that we are well fed as Kenyans?
Well, there are actually two things we said in the Vision 2030 on agriculture. One, food security, growing enough food to actually feed our people, and moving away from the usual grain, maize, and diversifying our whatever we put on the table. And that is very clearly articulated. And after you do that, you're able to feed your people, then you can talk about exports. On the cash crops, quite a bit of work has gone ahead, but in terms of what we eat, what we put on the table, people are refusing to move away from ugali. And that's what the trouble is. Yeah.
Could we perhaps go to...
On top of it, then we talked about irrigating our land. I know Tana, Kenny, and etc.
We'll get to that, the irrigation bit, but let me bring in Dr. Ayeko from Tegemeo. When you're hearing the comments so far, what is coming to your mind?
Aisha, thank you for having me here. And I just want to go back to the point you made a little earlier, whether this was a surprise or we knew about it, and Dr. Gakuru has said yes, we knew. We are aware that the drought has been increasing both in intensity and the frequency. So if we compare the 1980s and the 90s and to now, we see that is the trend. Now, in 2016, we already knew that we were going to have a bad year. And there were studies, there were warnings, both from the Met people that this is going to be a drought. From our end as policy research, we also did our studies. We did a food situation assessment, and we did some projections and forecasts to see where we will be. And we indicated, for example, that if no action is taken, we are going to go out of maize in end of April, early May. In 2017. Did you see any action being taken? So when we made those projections, I think as is usual, there are people who doubt some of that information. But this is based on evidence of the past and the trends and the changes that we've seen in climate. And so factoring all that in, we made those projections. Then the discussion was that we have enough maize. In fact, we had indicated that the country needs between April and July about 9 million bags to bridge that gap.
So we actually I knew this was a looming problem.
This was a looming problem.
Let me bring Mr. Masila, because your organization sits like at the center of everything, and you talk to all the stakeholders. Did you also predict that, you know, we might not have maize, we might not have unga in April, May?
Indeed, yes. We were part of the process that Dr. Yeko is talking about. Part of what we do at the Eastern Africa Grain Council is that we have a market information service, and we do collect data from the fields, from the markets. We monitor prices, and so we work with various other partners to be able to model and project to see what is going to come, not only looking at Kenya, but looking at the entire Eastern Africa region.
Is this happening in the other countries?
Absolutely. The problem, the drought affected the entire region, and that's why the problem is very big in Kenya now, because with the crop in Uganda not having been as expected, and also Tanzania not having it as expected, these two countries bridge in the gap in Kenya quite a lot through informal and even formal cross-border trade.
Right.
A good percentage of what we consume in terms of grains in Kenya is imported informally and also formally from Uganda, from Tanzania, and that's why people have not felt it so much in the past. But this time round, because Uganda had, you know, a serious drought, and also Tanzania, so we were in a much worse situation. But we knew it, and indeed, the warning bells were rung.
Let me take you first to what would be considered the maize hub of the country, to Kitale. Our reporter Philip Keitani has a program called The Next Frontier, and he traveled there to speak to farmers just to find out, are they farming maize? What is happening? Let's first take a look at that clip.
A new farming wave is sweeping through Trans Nzoia County. Currently described as the country's breadbasket, the county is home to some of the largest producers of maize and other cereals in the country. But now, even that is slowly changing as farmers reduce the amount of land under maize and start to embrace other crops with better returns. In this case, French beans for export. Phyllis Munyangi and Paul Nganga are two of the farmers who have already made the switch from maize to French beans, and for them, there is no looking back.
Nimeona ukulima wa French beans ni mzuri kuliko mahindi. Sababu mahindi unaongojea mwaka mzima, na French beans tunapata pesa kwa wiki moja. Na ukulima yake ni miezi mbili.
According to Phyllis and Nganga, with continued uncertainty over rains due to climate change, French beans are emerging as the perfect crop. They grow fast and do well during the short rainy season and can be picked just 2 months after planting.
Mahindi nilikuwa nikilima hii eka moja, napata around 40,000. Lakini wakati ile nilianza kulima hizi French beans, eka moja hiyo inaletea almost 200,000.
The farmers are making this change with the help of the United States Agency for International Development under its development arm, the Kenya Agricultural Value Chain Enterprises, KEVS, whose aim is to help increase the productivity and incomes of smallholder farmers.
Advantages of this area: no pest pressure like the Mount Kenya region, excellent rotational crop, which is maize. This one fixes nitrogen, is a legume. They are completely different to the maize. Its roots are taproot, the maize is fibrous. Very excellent for rotation.
A 1-acre plot yields 4 tons of French beans at an average selling price of 40 shillings a kilo. With this, farmers expect to earn over 240,000 shillings at the end of the harvest period. Planting starts at the onset of rains. With irrigation, French beans can grow all year round, but the main export season is from October to May. Sowing should be done such that most of the crop is ready between October to mid-December and from mid-January to end of May.
So, farmers in Kitale saying that, you know, I make 40,000 shillings per acre if I grow maize, but if I grow French beans, I make over 200,000 shillings. Is that the case for the growers in your association?
Certainly, I don't think farmers should be making 40,000 out of maize. And so I can understand what some of those farmers are talking about. And particularly as acreages get smaller and smaller, and that's the next problem that we have as a country, that for maize, for you to grow maize profitably and sustainably, you got to have a certain acreage. Now, the steps that I mentioned initially include the fact that we've allowed for land under maize and other cereals to keep getting smaller and smaller, and therefore uneconomical, but then also the agronomic support. I mean, we talk about budgetary allocations to agriculture, and I can tell you from the past budget that's been done, we're not getting anywhere near enough what we need to support agriculture. That's where you would find such things as extension support to farmers virtually grounding to a halt. And so all these elements, among others, will add up to lead to a situation where it's not quite profitable to do maize.
But I think the ordinary Kenyan will say government has given fertilizer subsidies. Isn't that working? Government is buying maize from farmers. Isn't that working?
I think if I might just interject, all of those interventions are wonderful and appreciated, but they're very small. When we say we're giving out farmers fertilizer on a subsidy, we're only giving a small amount to every farmer. It's not enough to have the impact. We're probably short 10 million bags and getting worse every year. I mean, the reality is Kenya no longer grows enough maize to feed itself. We depend on, as Kyoko said, on informal imports. This year, the perfect storm came. The whole region had a mega drought. So we were not able to have. So we've noticed the effect of the fact that we don't grow enough on ourselves. So all of these interventions, I mean, the recent intervention with the government releasing the cheaper maize from the NCPB, excuse me, 8 to 12 days worth of milling. So it was only going to be a short-term impact, and then we were back to the situation we'd been. The same when the government intervenes and sets a price for the NCPB. There's only so much money available to buy at that price, and then the price drops again.
Then how much do millers buy maize for, like a bag of maize?
It all depends. We typically follow the market. Each year the government announces a price through the National Cereals and Produce Board. And we typically will buy slightly above that price if there's a shortage, slightly below that price if we think there's going to be a big harvest. Typically over the last few years we've bought above that price. We will get the maize often ahead of the National Cereals and Produce Board simply because we pay cash 48 hours, 72 hours, whereas if you sell to the National Cereals and Produce Board, you'll wait quite a lot longer. And the farmers who have no other choice will go to the National Cereals and Produce Board. I just want to say often they don't come directly to millers. Many small farmers go through traders.
But do you think it's because, I mean, millers have been accused of underpaying for the maize, and that's why the government has to come in and, you know, sort of like announce their own price, trying to make things better for the farmer, trying to make them break even?
I think...
Asha, let me just come in here. I think there's this illusion that millers are underpaying the farmers, that farmers, spend so much and get very little, because we've done studies that show that, farmers can break even at certain points. We even have shared such kind of information. And then towards the end of the year, the minister, the cabinet secretary comes with a number, which is not evidence-based, but which distorts the market, pegging the price a little higher. So that sets in a motion the whole process. That is going to drive the prices up. The same farmers who are going to sell at that price are going to buy at even higher prices. So it's cyclical, okay? Now, I think last year also, we just did a study and we showed that, farmers would break even if the prices were like 2,800. Then the government says it's 3,000. The question is...
Let's even bring it to that point. Let's not let it escape us. We did hear the Deputy President during the last Kitale Agricultural Show announcing that government would buy maize at 3,000 shillings. What is your response, especially just, backriding on what Dr. Ayeko has said?
I think it is our Deputy President basically trying to motivate our farmers not to abandon the crop completely. And also noting that it's been a difficult time. I think that's basically what the government is actually trying to do. It's a breadbasket, and like we said, the acreage is shrinking, and we don't motivate these individuals. We may abandon the crop altogether. We may not really get individuals committed to continuing to do maize. But I think that perhaps we need to also start to look at what the cure for this should actually be. And I think we need to start to bring the other, cereals on the table, the other food items on the table, so that we are not so dependent. The major problem in this country is if there is no maize, there is no food. And I think we need to debunk that so that people can actually be able to survive on other crops.
And Mr. Masila, I think your organization even, did a research, or you're encouraging farmers to actually go for the more drought-resistant crops.
Yeah, yes. The point about the monoculture of growing maize in the same, on the same plot, one season after another is part of the reasons why we are where we are today. And that's why even our soils have really depleted. If you remember, I think a year or so back, a soil analysis report was launched by His Excellency the President, and this report showed that what we've been giving the soils in terms of fertilizers is not what the soils need. They actually needed to be reduced with acidity, and they needed other things, and they needed to be brought back to life, because a lot of our soils are literally dead because of how we've done. I've visited some plots where some farms where for the last 60 years, the farmers there have been producing maize after maize after maize, and that's wrong agronomically and from all these ways. You need to do rotation, you need to let the soil rest, there are many other things. But on the point of the drought resistance and all that, the point there is making sure that what you are growing is best suited for the agroecological region that you are in. And that's why at EAGC we've been promoting pulses and sorghum and millet and a lot of those other grains, especially in the lower rainfall areas and the lower, the drier areas, where sometimes we've been forcing maize in places where we shouldn't be forcing maize.
I remember last year, must have been February, the President and the European Union launched this program to start profiling soil all over the country. Did that really take off?
Yeah.
I mean, by now we should have research on where we should be growing maize, where we should be growing beans. Do we have that research available?
Yeah, the information is available from CARI and from many other places. The issue now comes in terms of to implement and to farm. Remember, all these farms are in the hands of private individuals as farmers. The decision what to plant is not a government decision. It's a decision made by various individual farmers.
But I mean, you're sitting next to a stakeholder who gathers the farmers, the growers. You're good friends, When you walked in here, you guys, you were greeting each other like you know each other. How do you not sit down with them and lobby them?
I think it's not so much a question of lobbying. There are very many factors that a farmer would consider before they go a certain direction in the crop enterprise that they choose to go with. And it's very good, we understand, away from the diversification of the food sources, there are obviously good reasons why crop rotation would be very important amongst the farmers. But the challenge that we have seen, and we have also participated in a lot of initiatives that will be asking some of the farmers, particularly those that come from fairly marginal areas, to try other crops, more drought-tolerant crops. But I'll tell you, that's the point I'm trying to make. The point is there isn't enough support mechanism towards helping those farmers to really successfully take up that. For instance, you tell a farmer, go ahead and do some cowpeas or green grams. Then the next thing they'll ask you is, where is the seed? Because there's no one who is applying such seed. The next thing that they will tell you is that provide me with agronomic support. The basic guidelines on what's the spacing, what's the fertilizer use, what's the maturity period, what are the varieties. All that is not there. We, in this country, sometimes tend to think that it is quite easy to push farmers off maize. Sometimes they simply, no, we do maize because to a lot of farmers, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing, that is what most farmers understand perfectly well. We keep asking them to...
Farmers have been growing maize for a really long time. Where are the seeds? Dr. Gakuru.
The Ministry of Agriculture should give us the seed. And the seed company that should happen. The research that goes with it, Kenya Seed, I think they need to support us. And And the other thing I also hear is that while we actually want our seeds to be certified in Kenya, in Tanzania, they don't do exactly that. So therefore, perhaps you get, a better result from there.
I want us to take a short breather, but you're not getting off that easy because you are on this table as the government representative. You've been seconded here as government representative. So we need, I think, some clearer answers on that issue. So let's take a short break. When we come back, let's talk about the way forward. How can we get the price of unga ya ugali to probably 60 shillings? Or what do we do? Do we change our diet? Do we eat potatoes and French beans?
And we have had the price of 2 packets of maize flour at 70-something at wholesale prices. And I think we will go back there when the drought is actually gone.
Okay, tell me.